Thank you for tuning in to part 3 of
our little series here.
Us conversating.
Yes. Dialogue.
Still conversating. Keep going. I know it's not a word. I don't care.
What's part 3?
Part 3. If clubs are expensive toys, but not necessarily, in my opinion, as expensive as they could be, right?
Yeah.
Let's say overpriced, I guess, if we want to use a term. If part of what we are paying for is truly technology that's beneficial to us as players, right? Let's go back to kind of how we got into this, right? Stuff that was basically given to us, stuff that we traded for and everything, versus kind of how you get into it now, right? When we were getting into it, you were given a bunch of stuff. Like I said, I traded a bunch of my old boxing stuff for it, and just went out and played golf.
Yeah.
Right, that's how it was. Force-fed golf into my life essentially, and it became a thing. Now, or well, let's say, you know, a couple years go by, you know, you can get kind of decent quality box sets, starter sets, right?
From like Cobra.
And even past there, you can actually get clubs at lower price points, right? That are still almost custom fittable.
Yes.
So if you're like a really tall guy, for example, you could still get a ordered set of quote unquote starter clubs that we can adjust for you, right? Make work. Now there's like a whole new thing out there as well, which is the direct to consumer thing, right? Now, is that more expensive than what me and you started with? Of course it is.
Yes.
Right? However, is it probably a little better than what me and you started with?
Could be.
I'm going to say I think it has potential to be.
Yeah.
The direct-to-consumer stuff is essentially stuff that, you know, decently made. I've got a little bit of experience kind of dealing with it, right? Seeing it from golfers and whatnot. I can't say I've ever played any of it myself, but I've taken some shots. I've hit some and everything, right? Some of them feel pretty good.
Yeah.
Some of them look the part, right?
There's actually this direct-to-consumer people that make different sole widths irons. So I thought that was really cool, actually, because
that's actually something that it doesn't take too long to understand what a guy's ground interaction looks like if you have any amount of golf background that can kind of make something like that actually pretty beneficial.
Yes.
You know?
Very much.
And that's what I'm saying, right? Like, you can almost get started off maybe a little more expensively than we did, but also maybe have a little bit of a foot ahead of where we were.
Yes.
At the same time from an equipment perspective.
That's a good way to say it.
So you are paying for a little bit more, but you're also getting, in all honesty, quite a bit more, right?
Yeah.
People always say this to me still. Like it's a question that comes up a lot when you do what I do, which is, you know, what do you think the smallest blade is? I think I played them. I don't think anything's smaller than an MP14, man. That thing is tiny. So small, right? Like, you take the smallest blade out there right now, which is probably the original blueprint from Ping. That thing makes, the MP14, I would say, makes that look big.
Yeah.
Right? I would say, at least from what I'm, and again, maybe I'm just blowing it up because of, you know, being someone who played them. I think they look bigger or smaller than like the old Ricky RFs that came out a couple years ago.
You mean the butter knife?
Those things are tiny, man.
Yeah.
Like, I remember, I have this thing about the sole. I feel like the sole was maybe a
5
quarter of an inch.
5 millimeters?
I think it was a quarter of an inch, legit. Like, whatever that is, it's not much, you know?
Yeah.
So.
But back to direct to consumer.
Yeah, direct to consumer. So, there's stuff out there that's pretty decent from a quality perspective, but
at a lower price.
What's at a lower price point, decent manufacturing,
Yeah.
decent, similar, comparable materials. The real only difference, I would say, is you're taking out not only the middleman, but also a lot of the marketing.
Yes.
Right? For example, you know, there's a lot of companies out there. I don't know if anyone's playing, I think it's NL, is it New Level? Next Level? I don't know. There's a lot of companies out there. Maybe not much from a tour presence perspective. Maybe not much being spent from the marketing department, if there even is one for some of these companies, right?
Yeah.
So the price doesn't have to reflect that, right? Because at the end of the day, these companies that produce these products, the price of said product is reflected by how much is spent. Part of how much is spent is getting information out to people like us, right?
Mostly I see is just like an Instagram ad or something, like
Yeah,
a Facebook ad.
like a YouTube, like quick little like ad or something.
I haven't
you know?
seen them on there yet.
I have seen. I know that there's one company that sponsors a channel that's pretty decent.
Yeah.
Again, I can't remember the name of the company, but you know they're out there. But again, pretty tough. And honestly, the biggest one is PXG. PXG is now almost a direct-to-consumer thing, right?
They have their own stores though.
Well, they do. It's a little bit different, but still, their newer stuff. They came out with that price point stuff.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh yeah. The lower one.
And again, they still have their expensive stuff. I think some of their wedges can cost like $6.50 a wedge.
It's not bad.
Yeah, but they have that price point stuff now, and you know, it seems decent enough.
Yeah.
You know, so I think the biggest trade-off, if you want to compare that to anything else, would be just the lack of the fitting potential.
Yes.
Right? Because
But if you're just starting out, you just need golf clubs.
well, and that's exactly what it is, right? The comparable would be, I'm going to say tech is maybe not the same, but it's at least of a similar ilk, right? I would say materials are similar.
Yeah.
I would say manufacturing processes are probably even relatively similar because again, you still have to be competitive or you're not going to sell anything, right? Because, you know, use it for an example. If I give you a set of clubs and they cost $700 and let's say the iron only goes 180 yards and decently, you know, bad numbers comparatively, and I give you another club that's $1,400, right? And the numbers are perfect. You are going to want that $1,400 set.
That is correct.
Because the numbers are worth it, right? And if you have more options in there, again, just that's how it is. So the fitting is really the only thing that's different. But then going back to, I think the targeted audience for this is maybe the person who's trying to get into it. So maybe what we're doing is we're actually lowering the cost of what it takes to get into golf, right?
Which is the big thing right now.
Exactly, right? Because that's part of, is golf expensive, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, right? Maybe these direct-to-consumer things aren't the worst, especially if the attempt is to make that entry cost a little bit better, you know?
Which I'm all for. Get more people in the game.
Oh, I agree. I mean, literally pays my bills. So yeah, worth it, right? And I can only tell you that I almost kind of wish that some of this stuff was available when I was getting into it, because I probably could have been convinced to spend a little bit more money than what I did, which was practically nothing, to get into this when I did, you know, if it meant that I could be a little bit more competitive, let's say. So there are options out there. I don't want you guys to think that there's nothing out there that's not at that super high price point. There's lots of options out there, and honestly, a lot of it's pretty good. Really, the biggest downside would be maybe some of it's not as, you know, as fittable because it's not necessarily available from a fitting perspective. However,
and tolerances could be a little different or wider.
at times, yeah. But again, if you've been playing golf for, you know, a year, right?
Who cares?
I would always tell you, go get clubs and go play golf for a couple of years before you even tend to do that, or attempt to do that, I should say. Interesting thought. I mean, knowing that, right? Again, like, would you attempt starting over today if you knew nothing about it and were on a limited budget, let's say, and didn't have the ability to test stuff like we do now? Would you jump into that?
Probably.
It makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Because again, we're smart enough to know that there's a difference out there potentially. It's just a matter of
What
is it?
Yeah.
You know? So again, interesting kind of point.
Let us know what you guys would do.
Yeah, that's always a good conversation point, right? What would you guys do given that situation? You know, let us know, right? For sure. I think this is good, and I think it's a good conversation to have as well, because golf's expensive. However, I don't necessarily think it's as expensive as I guess some people would have you believe.
Yeah.
Put it that way. All things considered. So let us know, again, what you guys think. Comment section. As always, please like and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully we didn't bore you to death with a 3-part series, but it's something that's been coming up a lot from a fitting perspective, cost of clubs, and you know, figured it was worth talking about. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time.